All right, let's get this off with a statement that frankly sounds almost unbelievable.
Go for it.
The United States' most integrated military ally, Canada, is now actively building its defense capabilities for one specific reason:
Hmm.
to function without relying on American equipment or American supply chains.
Right. That's really the heart of it, isn't it? When you boil down all the sources in front of us, that's the core takeaway. This isn't some temporary political spat. It's a permanent strategic pivot.
And that's what we're doing a deep dive on today. Canada's complete restructuring of how it buys military hardware, a deliberate move away from the U.S., and a full-on embrace of the European Union's massive new defense fund.
Security action for Europe, or SAFE.
And the numbers are, well, they're huge,
Yeah.
up to 150 billion euros.
You know, it's funny, when the former Prime Minister Mark Carney first announced that, quote, over 70 cents of every dollar of Canadian military capital spending will no longer go to the United States, most analysts just dismissed it. They did. The consensus was that it was political posturing, a way to push back against all the tariff chaos coming from the Trump administration, a negotiating tactic.
But they were completely wrong. The final nail in that coffin, the action that made it official, came on December 1st, 2025.
That's the date Canada formally joined SAFE, and not as an observer, but as the first non-European full participant. That move locks them in. It fundamentally changes the defense equation for all of North America.
And it was a direct reaction to what the diplomats are calling trade policy uncertainty.
Which is, the polite way of saying the constant threats, the instability around trade deals like NAFTA, the sudden steel and aluminum tariffs. It just made long-term planning with the U.S. impossible for Ottawa. You can't plan a 40-year fighter jet program on that kind of instability.
So, for you listening, this isn't just a Canadian budget story. This is a huge stress test for the entire Western defense architecture we've known for 70 years.
Absolutely. Every other major U.S. ally, Japan, South Korea, Australia, they are all watching this very, very closely. Canada is creating the blueprint for how to gain supply chain independence.
Okay, let's get into the details of this program. SAFE, Security Action for Europe. It officially launched back in May 2025. What exactly is it?
So at its core, it's a massive financing mechanism. It mobilizes that $150 billion in competitively priced long-term loans. The goal is to fund urgent defense needs for EU members and now Canada.
And what's so different about that? I mean, countries get loans for defense all the time.
Well, the terms are completely different. When you buy American, you're usually dealing with private contractors, commercial loans, maybe higher interest rates. SAFE is state-backed. It offers stable, often subsidized long-term financing. It immediately makes the European option far more attractive economically, especially for projects that last decades.
And this isn't just for, niche technology, right? The scope is huge.
The scope is everything. It's systematic. It covers the basics: ammunition, artillery, infantry weapons, and it goes all the way up to high-end systems like missiles, drones, you name it.
And the allocations show they're serious.
Oh, absolutely. Poland is getting something like $43.7 billion. Romania, over $16 billion. France, Hungary, they're all locking in huge sums. This is a full-scale reindustrialization effort.
But there's a catch, isn't there? A rule that's almost, anti-American by design.
That's a good way to put it. There's a critical procurement rule. Any contract funded by SAFE has a strict requirement.
Look at it.
No more than 35% of the total component cost can come from outside the EU and its closest partners, like the EEA or Ukraine.
So what does that 35% rule actually do? Does it just shut the door on U.S. companies?
It relegates them to being minority partners. That's the practical effect. An American company like Lockheed or Raytheon can't lead a project. They can't dominate the supply chain. It effectively ends their ability to win a contract with, say, 80 or 90% American content.
Which is how it used to work.
Well, that's how it almost always worked. This rule forces the investment, the manufacturing, the jobs to stay within the club. And Canada just bought a lifetime membership.
As a full participant, which is key.
Yeah.
They get the cheap loans, and Canadian companies can now bid on contracts across all 27 EU nations.
And the way they got that membership is really telling, especially when you compare it to the UK's attempt.
Right. Britain tried to join, but the talks just collapsed.
They fell apart in November 2025, and it was all about the entrance fee. The numbers are pretty stark.
The EU wanted, somewhere between 4 and 6.5 billion euros from the UK?
That's right. And Britain's counteroffer was Well, it was almost insulting. They offered maybe 200 to 300 million.
So not even close.
Not even in the same ballpark. But then you look at Canada, they paid a fee, but sources say it was in the millions, not billions. A tiny fraction of what the UK was asked for.
Why the huge discount for Canada?
It all came down to commitment. A few months earlier, in June 2025, Canada signed a much bigger security and defense partnership with the EU. That was the signal. It showed they were serious about a long-term strategic relationship with Europe that was truly independent of the United States.
Ah, so the UK was trying to have it both ways. Get the economic perks of SAFE while still clinging to the special relationship with Washington.
Exactly. They didn't want to commit to the pivot. Canada went all in on the divorce, and they got everything they wanted. For Canadian defense companies, the upside is immediate.
And for American contractors, the downside is just as immediate. This brings us to the multi-billion-dollar hit.
It starts with the F-35 fighter jet. That's the single biggest piece of leverage Canada has.
An 88 aircraft deal, valued at $19 billion, which is about, what, US $14 billion?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
And Canada is now officially reviewing that commitment. If they walk away, that contract is gone. And so are the decades of sustainment revenue, the maintenance, the upgrades, the spare parts that come with it.
And we know they're already talking to European competitors.
Actively negotiating. The CEO of Sweden, Saab, has already confirmed they're in talks to produce their Gripen fighter in Canada.
And you've also got the French Dassault Rafale and the Eurofighter Typhoon as options.
And this gets to a core difference in philosophy. A company like Saab is willing to transfer technology and set up a final assembly line in Canada. That creates Canadian jobs, Canadian expertise.
Whereas American contractors have always kept that high-value production very close to home.
Tightly controlled in the U.S., yes. This move allows Canada to build its own sovereign industrial base, which is a huge part of the strategy.
And it's not just fighter jets. They need submarines, right? For the Arctic especially.
Critically. And SAFE gives them access to the world leaders in conventional submarines. France's naval group, Germany's Thyssen Marine, Sweden's Saab Kockums, none of which use American tech.
So if you add it all up,
yeah,
what's the cumulative damage here for the U.S. defense industry?
The estimates are staggering. It could easily top $50 billion over the next decade. You have the initial $14 billion F-35 loss plus all that 40-year sustainment revenue. It's a massive, massive blow.
Okay, let's name names. Which American giants are on the losing end here?
Well, Lockheed Martin is obviously number one with the F-35. Then there's General Dynamics. They've dominated Canada's armored vehicle market for decades. Now they're facing European competitors who can offer better industrial offsets under the safer rules.
And what about missiles and electronics?
That's where you see companies like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman taking a hit. Their missile systems, their radar, their electronic warfare suites, they're all being systematically replaced with European options from companies like MBDA, Thales, or Saab.
Even Boeing is at risk.
For sure. Things like patrol aircraft, transport helicopters. Canada now has direct, affordable access to European alternatives like the Airbus A400M or Leonardo helicopters. This isn't just one bad deal. It's a systemic replacement across the entire board.
But hang on, isn't there a huge operational risk here? The Canadian military is built to be interoperable with the U.S. through NORAD. Does flying a Swedish jet not create a ton of friction?
That is the billion-dollar question. And for 70 years, the answer was simple. You achieve interoperability by buying American. Everyone uses the same gear, the same data links, the same logistics.
SAFE deliberately breaks that model.
It creates a parallel Western industrial base. Canada is making a bet that the long-term reliability and sovereignty they get from Europe is worth the short-term headache of integrating different systems.
And that sends a powerful message.
It sends the clearest possible signal. If your most integrated ally is actively building workarounds, it means they no longer consider you a reliable long-term partner.
And nowhere is that more important than the Arctic.
Exactly. The Arctic is heating up militarily. Russia, China, they're all there. Historically, that was a joint U.S.-Canada job under NORAD.
But SAFE changes that calculus entirely.
It does. It opens up a whole new set of partnerships for Canada with the Nordic countries. Norway, Sweden, Finland, nations that actually live in the Arctic and share the same strategic priorities.
So Canada could partner with Sweden on an Arctic submarine?
Or develop surveillance tech with Norway, or drone capabilities with Finland. All funded through SAFE, using European tech. The U.S. just assumed it would always be the primary partner for North American defense. That assumption is now broken.
Which proves This is about so much more than just buying new planes. It's a full-blown economic strategy.
It is. Carney said it himself. He said this would unlock billions for Canadian businesses and create massive new opportunities for Canadian manufacturers. It's about building an entire ecosystem.
And it's permanent. That seems to be the key point here.
It's absolutely permanent once you sign these decades-long contracts, once you build the factories in Canada, once your companies are integrated into European supply chains. You don't just undo that because the political winds in Washington change for a year or two. The shift is structural.
Which brings us to the ultimate backfire of Washington's pressure campaign.
A complete and total backfire. They wanted to pressure Canada into line.
And instead, they pushed Canada directly into a European defense and economic orbit.
They wanted to protect American defense contractors.
And they ended up costing them their most reliable foreign customer. A loss of, what, $50 billion or more over time?
And finally, they wanted to demonstrate American strength.
But they actually demonstrated that American leadership has become too unpredictable for even its closest friend to rely on.
The result is fragmentation. You're going to have Canadian forces flying Swedish jets, sailing German-designed submarines, using French comms systems. That creates real long-term complications for NORAD and for NATO that simply didn't exist before.
So, to sum it all up, Canada has pulled off something remarkable here. They've leveraged a $150 billion European partnership to systematically break free from their dependence on American military supply chains.
The threats and tariffs from Washington didn't produce compliance. They produced a permanent, irreversible alternative. It's the highest possible price to pay for political instability in an alliance.
Indeed. And it leaves a really critical question for the future, something for you to think about.
Yeah.
If this kind of divergence continues, with our closest allies using different equipment, different logistics, different data links, how do you maintain a shared defense architecture like NORAD? What does NATO even look like when its members can't easily fight alongside U.S. forces anymore? That's the test unfolding right now.